Welcome back. The Liliesleaf Trust is holding a panel discussion with Roelf Meyer, Pravin, Gordhan and David Makhura under the theme, the negotiated political settlement as part of Mandela Day. And for more, we cross to our reporter Aldrin Sampear, where panelists have been remembering Madiba and their interactions with him. Aldrin, a very good afternoon to you.
Initiative to bring together civil
discussions that have been taking place here at Liliesleaf over the past few days, if I'm not mistaken, where various guests have been coming through to speak about the legacy of former President Nelson Mandela. And today's theme was focusing on the negotiations heading into the 1994 elections, the first democratic elections that the country had, and we had the likes of Roelf Meyer, who, remember, was one of the National Party's members of Parliament, was part of those negotiations, also leading into the interim constitution that the country had back in 1993, leading up, of course, to the 1994 elections that took place in April. But quite importantly, and this is a question that I raised with the panel as well, is that if you consider the ANC's discussion document back in 1992, 1993 about being ready to govern, is where South Africa finds itself in terms of the current political landscape, whether the country has come full circle, considering that you have the 2019 elections coming up, and a possibility that the 2019 elections, after the 2019 elections, the country could have a coalition government. And the question is whether the country as SA, if we are ready for a coalition government, considering the complexities of a coalition government. For instance, if you look at some of the issues being faced at various municipalities, if you speak about Metsimaholo in the Free State, as well as Makhura City on the west of Gauteng. However, though, Phoebe Potgieter-Kubule also pointed out that the ANC has been in discussions or talks around coalition governance and how it will deal with the issues around coalition governance, but it also has experience in terms of coalition governments. If you look in what happened in was it post 1994 in KwaZulu-Natal, and then of course you have the DA, which has been part of coalition governments in the city of Cape Town. Pravin, Gordhan, quite interestingly, says it's almost inevitable that in 2019 South Africa will have a coalition government. It will be very difficult, and this was what Roelf Meyer said as well, that coalition governments are very difficult, and he doesn't think that the country is ready for a coalition government. Speaking on the side, speaking also rather about the current political developments, a question that was pointed quite directly at the two ANC members. This is now Pravin Gordhan as well as Phoebe, speaking about President Jacob Zuma, whether President Jacob Zuma is the problem in the ANC. Phoebe Potgieter-Kubule struggled to answer that question, but said that she has raised her views inside the party about President Jacob Zuma's leadership. However, though, Pravin Gordhan was quite frank, came out quite clear, saying that President Jacob Zuma must step aside and allow somebody else to come in and lead. And this is quite interesting, considering that in the next few weeks we'll have the discussion around, we'll have the motion of no confidence debate in President Jacob Zuma being debated on the 8th of August. What will the likes of Pravin Gordhan, and now we know from Makosi Khoza has also indicated that President Jacob Zuma should resign, what would those people be doing? Because they are our ANC members, and the ANC has already said that all its party members, all MPs must toe the party line, and the ANC's position is clear that it will not vote against President Jacob Zuma when that motion of no confidence is being debated, but also considering that it could plunge the country into a crisis if you have the president resign, but also not resign rather, but not resign, but having a motion of no confidence in the president being successful, which then means that the entire cabinet, including the deputy president of the country, the ministers and the deputy ministers, all have to resign. Quite an interesting political time that the country finds itself in. So we'll have to watch closely what will happen on August the 8th, considering that you have these members of the ANC coming out speaking quite publicly against President Jacob Zuma's leadership, and that the president should resign.
All right, Aldrin, thanks so much. We'll leave it there. Aldrin Sampear, very interesting discussions taking place on Mandela Day at Liliesleaf Farm in Rivonia.